any more on this particular subject? I don't think I'm any clearer than I was before. But I do have Mr. Nelson coming up next, unless there's something else on this particular topic. Okay.
He's talking on this for sure.
Pardon me? On just the piece about how you get from here to there to there. That's the only motion on the floor. And we still have a motion on the floor. Yeah, we're only speaking on the motion, but we're only speaking on this one. Okay. Having said all that and hearing nobody else, I'm sure everybody's totally confused. Commissioner Nelson, bring us back on track.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Fink. I find it ironic that we have a policy and a procedure in place. Yet when we're discussing moving this to the board, we're adamant about following our policies and procedures, and yet I've got a commissioner making a motion and supporting the motion to not follow our policy and procedures, which this board has established. I'm sorry, you've got me confused, because the board's policy is to allow our employee relations department to handle these types of affairs. That's the board's policy. We're talking about deviating from that policy, and yet as we talk about deviating from that policy, we want to make sure that we're following our policies and procedures. That concerns me. That's one concern. The second concern, and I have to go back to this, and I want everyone here to be very clear. I'm not trying to badger our attorney on this, but we is this board. We is not the county attorney. We is not anyone other than who we, as a board, we the elected officials of the people of this county, this board decides who it goes to. We have made that decision, and I still have to go back to one thing, because at least in the private sector, and I think it really carries through with all of the legal profession, where there was an error made, as egregious as the error that was made in submitting to the press the name of our employee. My fellow board members, that's a very egregious error. And it compromises, it's still, I can't get past this. It compromises the ability of our attorney and her office to represent this board. I cannot see how that does not compromise us. And I think if you really, I want you to think about that. It is that egregious of an error. So having someone who is not part and party to this case, and all of us here in Martha's very short time here at St. Louis County, I think every member of this board has had the opportunity to work with her in some capacity, and I have found her to be a very competent, very forthright individual who will do this board, we, as our representative, because it clearly states within the EEOC rules that we don't have to have an attorney there. At this point of this discussion, we don't have a case, we don't have an agreement, we have an investigation. And we have a representative who, quite frankly, was not here at the time, who does not carry the burden that our attorney carries in the fact that, as I described, egregious error occurred under her watch in her office. Okay? That's not part of this. Now, we have to make a further decision, commissioners, at some point in time when the EEOC has completed their work. I believe we are going to once again have to have this discussion. But I think we are very premature, in what we are doing at this point in time. I will tell you that when we have the next discussion, I hope to have further information from Attorney Ford about the ethical piece, which she has already offered to provide to us. I hope to have additional information from administration, which we've already heard that we are going to be receiving. But at this point, we have a policy, a procedure in place that is carrying out all of the roles and responsibilities that this board has set up. And we need to allow the process to continue. At some point, I believe we are going to have to make the decision as to whether or not our attorney's office and our county attorney's ability to represent us in this particular case has been compromised. I believe we have to get to that point. Now, I'm trying to be as open-minded as I can on it, but at this point, I believe that to be the case. So, but we're still premature in making that decision. I will listen to all arguments before ultimately making that decision if this case gets to that point. It's not there yet. If this matter, because I don't even really see it as a case yet. If this matter comes back to us. So, you know, we have got to look at all facets of this, and I have to tell you that one piece is a significant facet of this. Commissioner Crone, the last question I would have, and I know I should ask this of the board as a whole, but as you as our past chair, you know, one of the things I remember making that motion, to have you making or supporting it, to have you be as our chair, sit on that ethics committee and make certain that we had established this practice. And I am concerned that we established it, came back to the board agreed upon it, and now we're going to change again. I'm concerned about that, because I thought our board did some very good work there in making certain that we moved it off and left that role and responsibility to you as the chair at that point in time, along with the advice of Administrator Fry and others, to make certain that what you brought back to us was very sensitive and very well thought out. And I really felt good about how that came back to us, that we would use our employee relations department. And now I'm concerned that we would usurp the authority that this board saw fit to give that office. And how should we then ask her to go back and represent us in the future when we have really undercut her authority to perform for us? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner O'Neill, I have you here.
Point of privilege. Could I ask for a 10-minute recess?
You can do that.
Thank you.
If you need a full 10 minutes? Or
No.
10 minutes. All right, let's do 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Let's do, and in fact, I was going to say I can do a 7 and get right where I want to go, but 10 minutes is fine.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson, I assume you were finished with your comments?
Chair Commissioner Fink, I was indeed finished.
Okay. Now, if I understand this motion correctly, what we're saying is that next week that this item should be on the agenda. An item should be on the agenda to close the session.
Correct.
And that will then require us to vote on that particular item.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. The next meeting.
The next meeting.
I said, yeah, next meeting.
Next meeting. Exactly.
I'm only correcting our
Sorry.
chair on this. Okay.
We have a motion on the floor.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In hearing all of this, it has been fruitful up to a point as far as the different opinions going on and so on. And trying to hearken back to the meeting which I was in, that Commissioner Nelson talked about. And I do remember directing the investigation to the employee relations, the negotiation part, and fuzzy on, I don't know, I'd like to see those minutes, but at this point, go on in this divided fashion and the small amount of people that we have here. I would like to withdraw my support to the motion.